Good morning, everyone. Welcome. This is Angela Coulter and
Sarah Sieg Avignoni.
bringing you this week's Ascended World Collective Energy Share.
Good morning, Nicole.
Yes, good morning. Good morning, Yasmin. So yeah, it's so funny because it's almost like these conversations are spirals. It's like where do we jump on the spiral? Or where do we
roller coaster today?
Where do we start today?
Yep.
So last week, as a recap, I feel like an episode of some series. As a recap, last week we talked about irritation and huge change, and also our good morning, Gloria. Our lack of we'll go a certain amount, we'll go 20, 30, 40, 50, 70% to change, and then we're like, oh, that's enough, right? Good enough. I want to keep the rest of this, and that's still like a little hidden ego thing, right? So we started talking about, as soon as we got off the air last week, we were like, there's another part to this. And it's like we get to a place, especially in the conscious spiritual community, right?
Right.
Where we think we've made it there, gotten there, and then we think that's enough, right? And it's really only about 80%.
Right. Yeah.
And
I'm special enough right here.
Right. Or I'm ahead of the game enough right here. I'm ahead of the bell curve enough right here.
Right.
So I'm just going to stop, or I'm going to float. And the funny thing is, because it seems, and we think of these things it's so deeply embedded, we barely are conscious of the thought, right? It's like, oh, I'm good enough right here, because right here is still so much more further than so many others.
It's a leap.
Right. So
oh, I did it.
Right. And everybody else will think I did it all the way, even though at some level I know I have still a ways to go.
Right.
And, and that was evidenced by, you and I were talking about another person we know, and they were talking about and how they were, and we are all about self-empowerment, right? We all like the Trinity practice, and all of what we talk about has to do with taking power and 100% self-responsibility for our creation of the creation of our reality, right?
Right.
And which means, which we've talked about, this is like summing up, I don't know, a dozen other podcasts that we've done. All of the things about tools are tools. Tools are things that we put energy, that we give the energy to, that reflect back to us the power that we already have, right?
Right.
And where a vast majority of us stop is by giving away our power to tools to say, oh, I have to use this. I have to use,
I
have to use Reiki, and even Trinity. I've said that. Eventually you stop using it. You just are
it.
All of that. Right. Whether it's tarot cards or crystals or, pharmaceuticals or,
right.
There's so many tools, right? Pendulums,
incense, cleaning the space.
Right.
Anything.
Right. Yeah.
Anything external to you.
Yes. Or even calling in angels, calling in channeling, right. Or calling. So in the situation we were talking about, it was like somebody, oh, well, I'm calling the wind. What was it? The wind gods. The wind gods to support you.
Or the wind angels. Sorry.
That was it, the wind angels to support you. Which we do this as decorations in our minds because it makes us feel better about giving away about somebody else doing the heavy work for us, what we believe to be, right, the heavy work,
Right.
And the thing is that that's not bad. But the point that we've made over and over again is it's important to at some point recognize that is just me giving that power away to come back to me.
Right. And it's also not taking responsibility. Like, for instance, in the wind, it's like I was meeting somebody and we were driving and it was really windy and we were coming from two separate places. And they texted and said, is it windy from your direction? And I was like, yes, we'll send the wind angels. And it's like, that's the same as saying that I'm not responsible for the wind.
But you're helpless to that. Right.
Right. Right.
And, we say it with this egoic meaning of, oh, but I'm doing that because I want to show that I care.
Right.
And then I want to show that I'm imparting my power to protect you, because what it implies is you're not as powerful as I am,
Or as the wind
or as the wind. Right.
angels. Right.
So, and there's like we said, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that, because that's all the faceting that we've created in duality.
Right.
The real big key that we're missing is, at some point, it's time to let that go. It's time to let go of even like crystal balls, which we love. They're
Right,
us
right.
too, right? Or
Right.
whatever your tool of choice is, it doesn't matter.
Right.
Or, like, I mean, we joke around and say things like, I mean, we joke around and say, oh, like, I called it the parking lot, the parking spot
Parking fairy.
fairies, or the parking angels. But I do recognize it's just me throwing it out there and creating that for me, right?
Right. Right.
But many can quantify that in their minds to say, oh, it worked because of that, because I called in the angels or the fairies. It worked because I called in this particular energy, or I
Well,
called.
I've even noticed that when I do pull a tarot card, I phrase things differently. It's like, okay, I lay my hand on top of the deck and say to myself, pull the card to the top for what I need to understand today. So I'm asking myself for the answer through the cards.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Not saying to the cards, oh, give me your wisdom.
Right. And sometimes I do that, and I do it very similarly. Like if I use a card, which I like, some divination cards are fun. But they're all just like, I recognize it's all just a reflection of me back to me, right?
Me giving me an answer that I've chosen to externalize.
Right. So I'll say the same kind of thing. I'll say something like, so let me just pull the card that reflects back to me what there is for me to see.
Right.
Today.
Exactly.
And I'm not yet seeing within myself, kind of thing.
Right.
But the thing is, I do recognize it's me, and I will go months sometimes without even looking at anything like that. But then sometimes I just like to play, and there's nothing wrong with that. But the thing is to recognize. And so, okay, we're we get on our soapbox. We get up on our soapbox about this. But the point is, that's like going 70 or 80%. It's like, oh, I'm so far advanced. I'm so far more conscious than, this, so that's enough. And I'm going to stay here.
And I'm only going to accept 70 or 80% of who I really am.
Yes.
Which that gets back to the key that we came up with, was that you're only accepting 70, 80% and standing in only that percentage of your authenticity.
Right. And that means that there's some part of you that still feels like you can't go too far ahead.
Right.
You can't, you have to limit yourself. You're still scared of something if you are 100% authentic. And it's not, that again is not what
subject to judgment from others, from yourself.
Right. And there's no judgment about that, because this is a deeply embedded habit for us to really let go of. It's really what has been our chains.
Right.
And shackles. Like we take one set off, and then we go to the end of the next set of shackles, Right. So
we're giving ourselves maybe a little bit more lead in our chain. So we can stretch a little bit more.
Right. And then we get to the end of that, and then it's like, okay, we do all this stuff so we can release that, and then we have another one on us. It goes a little further.
Right.
And it's not like, I think that's a great illustration. But it has to do with things like, the things that we're afraid of. I mean, that's still limiting. If you are still afraid of anything, there's still a percentage that you're not allowing to step into your own power. There's still some part of you that does not believe that you're that powerful, that you fully create your reality.
Right.
And trust that it's perfect.
Right.
And that means getting sick, the fear of getting sick, the fear of getting hurt, the fear of losing.
Others' judgment.
Yes. The fear of others' judgment.
Being alone, being unlovable. right.
Right.
Those are the biggies.
Being abandoned.
Oh yeah.
That's a
Oh
big
yeah.
one too. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
So, and this is like, and yes, we have talked about this, but it's like we get to certain points. Gloria says, is that like giving ourselves permission? And like what? I guess clarify, please, Gloria. I'm
Yeah,
not sure.
I think the lag has confused
Yes.
the relevance of her question.
Yeah. But
Oh, maybe not standing in your full authenticity. It gives you permission to not show up fully.
yeah,
It's like they're so tied close together.
it's true. It's true. But what, and then like the thing is, they're like, well, look at how far I've come and look at what I've done. And I am so authentic and blah, blah, blah. And yet then in the next breath, you're like, oh, sending the wind
angels
to help you, and it's like, and then we say, oh no, but that's not compassionate if you're not saying, oh, I'm going to send my prayers for you and whatever. But in a way, it's saying, I'm in a way when we do that, like, because we have now equated that with being a good person, right? Being caring, being, the love and light filled person. So you have to be this way, right? And it's always like, oh, send prayers, send healing or whatever. And it's like, nobody heals us but ourselves.
Right.
So yes, we're all each other and facets of each other. What we can do is hold space for each other as we are, like, and when we talk about holding space, it's like, well, I always just hold an individual in a space of love, with the intention that they can open up to create the reality they choose.
Right.
Open up to taking power and resolving whatever the situation is themselves. I don't send anything because it's not for me to send.
Right.
I mean, unless I'm guided. Sometimes I'm guided to connect in with them or whatever and help them to do that. But more times than not, it's like, it is for them to set. And that's why I feel like a lot of us are getting, a lot of individuals here are getting into crisis mode, right? Because they're used to saying, help me, help me, help me, help me. And that's just another form of saying, help me is send prayers, please, right? Meaning, I don't have the power to do this myself, so you need to help me, right? There's a hidden, it's a hidden disempowerment.
Right, which is, again, lack of authenticity, 100%.
Right.
Authenticity.
Right. And it's not that we don't help each other. There's just such a different energy about the whole thing. It's the thing is, as we've talked about so many times, it's always to ask guidance what there is for you to do or be in any situation, right?
Right.
Because what we have gotten lost in is getting so entrenched in the idea that we're supposed to help other people who can't help themselves, right?
Right.
That we don't realize that taking over somebody's whatever journey
right
prevents them from completing that stuff themselves,
or postpones it in the moment.
Right.
And which I mean, even with my kids, I have to sometimes just rein myself back in and go, if I do what they're asking me to do, then it only postpones this opportunity for them, and I don't want it to get louder,
right,
or worse, or which is judgment, or a stronger voice that they can't pawn off on someone else.
Right. Gloria said on her, is that like giving ourselves permission to grow and change and move forward? Yeah. That's the hardest. That's our heart. I think one of what we consider the hardest lessons, right, is getting past that, because especially being a parent, because you want to help your kids, right? You want to help, you want to, because then your ego says, oh, I can tell them how to do that and it'll make it so much easier. Right. But really it's so much easier or convenient. Convenience really the word. It's so much more convenient.
It's like, oh, I know exactly what they need to do, just but then they don't learn how to do that.
Right.
And I acknowledge that in doing that, it would be about me.
Right.
Because I don't want to listen to them struggle through that, or I don't want to, hold their hand through it or whatever. It's just quicker if I just do it.
Well, and then also a lot of times and then they'll love me more because I did it for them.
Or feel more indebted to me.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Or put me higher on the pedestal.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a tricky thing because we have it so interlaced with societal norms and expectations, right? Which we believe we have to follow, which believe define us, right? And so this is why we then get stuck. Like we keep on untangling, right? Like we were saying, the chain, right? The chain,
Right.
we free ourselves from these shackles, and then we're just find ourselves, and there's another set that just takes us a little further. But
Well, and that they may be, maybe we going from just the old rusted to, okay, now these are a little cleaner. And then we upgrade. Oh,
and a
these
little lighter, but they still limit us. Maybe they're a little prettier. Maybe they're made out of crystal instead of metal.
we've made them a little bit more ornate.
That's right. But
We have our diamond shackles on.
yeah, that's right. Oh, they're so sparkly. Right. But it's like that song it's like in the back of my head, though. And it's like, how many times we wear the chains and we don't realize we have the key? That's the whole thing. That's the whole trick. Right.
Right.
And we have the key right in our hands. There's nothing. All we have to do is let ourselves go. But that means it's important to go that 100%. And the 100% is for us, and it ties together so much of what you and I have talked about, I guess, over the last several months, right? Which is for us to truly move forward is for us to let all the other stuff behind us just crumble. Right. But that includes cultural norms and expectations. It includes, what people define as a good person, right? Or a bad person, even more so, because that's what we avoid, right? We try to avoid being defined as a bad person.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And that's always given the same. It's no different than being defined as a good person. It's got the same kind of like expectations and requirements. Yeah.
Yeah.
So one's based on lack and one's based on, fulfilling.
I was looking at our notes from when we talked Friday and talking about how, everybody's, a lot of people are still looking to be saved.
Yes.
This new candidate's going to save us, and they're going to put all these safety measures into place, and the vaccine's going to save us, and it's like,
or the star beings are going to save us, or
right, or it's still that again,
yeah,
not taking on that 100% full responsibility, and that ties back in with that phrase that, we're the people who we've been waiting for.
Right.
We're right here, right now. It's step into that authenticity,
right?
Step into that 100% of who you are. And that's the source of the saving is within yourself.
Yeah.
So we talk about leaps of faith, and the leap is not external, it's internal. And
yes,
you look at, I can feel that just, I don't know, I feel like when I say that, I just feel this opening up inside me that I feel bigger than who I have ever felt before, but it's all within me. And it's that internal expansion. And that's where the authenticity feels.
Yeah.
That feels.
Yeah, that feels great. Yeah. Because I think about, it's funny, is I had a lot of observation about something around this that had to do with, my oldest, my 24-year-old had the flu. She came down with a flu a week and a half ago. She hadn't had the flu. She was like 4 years old, but both my kids, because we've been very holistic and whatever, very healthy, but she's going through a lot of stress with her job. She's very unhappy there, blah, blah, blah. So that's what happened. What happens? Your immune system goes down when you're stressed and angry and resentful. And then, whatever. So she gets sick, and we live in the same house. She and her boyfriend live in our basement. Let's just tell everybody. That doesn't matter. Doesn't matter to me. But anyway, they live down in the basement. So it's like they live in a separate, part of the house. But so I would go down and spend time with her several times a day. And she had fever and whatever. And she kept on being so like, I don't have COVID. I don't have COVID. I'm like, no, actually you don't. And I said, and by the way, it doesn't matter because I treat you the same no matter what you had, because I have no fear of getting it. I would sit with her, I would talk to her, I would bring her stuff. and and then she's like, oh, well, don't get too close. I'm like, okay, you are my child. And when I was, like when you were a kid, like how many times I caught your puke in my hands, and stuff like that. I'm like, yeah, no, not bothering me, in the least kind of thing. And so, but the thing is, the reality is I don't have any fear about getting sick.
Right.
And so the thing is, I don't need to, and I was like, I treat you the same no matter what it was.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
And so it turned out it wasn't, which, was a great relief to her, but I'm just like, okay.
Right. Yep.
So the thing is, but that's the same as what we've been talking about too, about things like, how we've seen people who've had, like, over the years that I've been doing this, I've had clients that have come in with the flu that have called me and wanted to cancel. And I'm like, it's actually probably better for you to even come in right now, because we can help clear, we can work together so that you can clear this stuff out so that you can get better faster. I'm not afraid of getting it. And so, and if I do, or if I did, then there's a reason for that too. And there was a reason that I allowed it to happen. And it has nothing to do with the other person. That's full empowerment.
Right. Right. And I was looking at something else we said, and that is when you create your reality, or your creations in general, create from that place of that 100% authenticity. And it's so much more impactful. And just, I mean, the power of that authenticity. I mean, we've said this, but this is like a whole different basis, I think, of creating your reality, of living, of expanding, moving forward, being.
Yeah. And I think, it's interesting. We have a lot of stuff that we do that there's a lot of stuff, like, because, this is really based on a collective discussion, right? That's what we do this for every, week, right? So, some may ask, well, if you're not helping each other, right, then you're not feeding into the health of the collective, right? And it's like, but if you're not helping yourself, then you're not doing that either.
At a more basic level,
at a more basic level, right? And the thing is, if we all got to that place where we were in such a powerful spot, right, of saying, I created this, I can change it, I've got all the power to do it, I don't need to have something come from outside to do it, I can choose to, but I know it's me doing this anyway, right? If we all came to that, then nobody else would need help anyway, right? Because it would all be self-empowerment.
Right. Yeah.
And so that would be the collective stepping up and saying, I've got this. Right. And just think how much more powerful that is.
Right. And there's so much hidden where we're not doing that.
Yes.
But like last week, talking about certain things, and you want to follow into the hole that you've created in the path, or the groove that you've always gone down. And it's that, but that's not who I am anymore. And coming back to that realization of, I no longer claim that as who I am.
Yes.
That's no longer my authenticity.
Yep. Yeah. And it wasn't wrong yesterday. It was just different. That's all.
Right. Right.
Because we've talked about that too.
That in everything we do, every word, every thought, word, and deed.
Yep. Yep. And we've talked about that too. Like, is where we are in authenticity today is going to be different than tomorrow. And it's not that one is wrong and one is right. It's just where we are in this moment. Right.
Right. Right.
But if we commit to that authenticity in every moment, right, that just keeps on expanding, almost like an exponential, it's almost, I see it like a supernova explosion kind of thing.
Right. Right.
That feels really good. So, and the thing is, it's funny because we still think, and these are the little tiny parts that we hide in our minds that the ego tries to insert in the consciousness thing, because we convince ourselves, myself included, that it feels better when a group of us are doing it together. It feels better when a lot of people have the same intention.
Right.
right? It feels better when, we talk about when two or more hearts gather kind of thing. How many people have
Right.
said that? And I feel that, right? And then I ask myself, well, then what am I still not allowing myself to feel that all the time, whether I'm alone or with 20 other people?
Right. It's that authenticity to allow that expansion into the concentricity the
Concentricity. Yeah.
concentricity of the expanded consciousness.
Hmm. Yep.
And if that's part of your authenticity, when that becomes part of your authenticity, it's easier to stay in that place by yourself.
Yeah. Yep.
Which I think is the key for how what we should be learning right now during this shelter in place, during this pandemic, during this whatever, is the opportunity to be able to do that, which we've talked about that as well.
A lot. Yes. So, and it's, again, when those things come up, it's not to judge them. It's not to say, oh, what kind of a loser are you that you're still depending on this, right?
Right.
It's to say, oh, look at that. Look at how much I depend on this, believing that that's going to provide this for me. And
Right.
how do I change that? How do I change the energy of that so that I take that back, that power back, right? And allow it. How do I start practicing? And because of, I was thinking about this over the weekend. This might be just a, I don't know, discussion today or another day, but how we have trained ourselves to believe that the only way we can accurately and we've trained ourselves to believe that the only way we can accurately and powerfully do something is through physical practice of it. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, if you practice, you'll get that good one day, right?
Right.
Or, oh, well, you're just at the beginning of this, so you haven't, had the years of practice and stuff. So it's funny that that's a really little embedded belief, right? That we still use as a shackle, because we say, oh, well, I've only been doing this for a week. I've only been doing it for a month. I've only been doing it for a year. And
I think that goes back to, instead of having to learn something, it's just remembering.
Right. Remembering
That
it.
you already know. It's just you haven't remembered yet that you know.
I mean, look at those like 4-year-olds, 3-year-olds that come in and they can play symphonies and they can stuff, right? And it's like, well, they didn't take lessons for any amount of time because they're only 3 or 4 years old,
Right.
And they can remember stuff. And people say, oh, well, that's just youth. And it's like, well, no, you know what that is? It's still unconditioned to believing that you cannot allow that remembrance in so easily, right?
Exactly.
So we believe that somebody that presents that we believe to be more advanced than us, to be more, conscious than us or whatever, we believe that that's because of their practice. One of the things we've been myth busting for years now is you don't have to be, studying for 30 years in a cave to be enlightened.
Right.
And deprive yourself and half starve yourself and do this and do that. You don't have to do anything for that. You can wake up one morning and that's it.
Right. And that's, how you're choosing to create
that remembrance. Yeah.
Right. If you want to create it through the suffering, that's what you're going to do.
And always know that we can change that in any minute, any second, like that, instantaneously. Instantaneous healing, what we call instantaneous healings, instantaneous resolutions. And you and I have both seen a ton of that over the years.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't believe it. In general, we don't believe it, or we believe it's only so we can only do it so fast. Oh, well, my body can only heal so quickly.
Right.
Or I can only, I only have the ability for this, or I only have so much money, or I only have so much time, or I only have, like how many, all those things that we use as excuses, right? That limit us with those shackles to taking ourselves to 80% or 90%,
Right.
or 95%. And then we just keep it there.
Right.
because that's enough. I don't know about you, but I have seen a lot of that in the past week since we started talking about this. Like it's been so apparent to me in observation how much our realities have these reflections of, oh, that's enough.
Oh,
And that's enough. Oh, no, that's enough. That's good enough.
right.
In the terms of the old enough of that's enough. So stop and limit, right? That's
Right. And
enough.
if you start substituting the word, that's authentic enough. That
Yeah.
really, it makes you go, wait a
What?
minute.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and I've found that my conversations since we had this conversation on Friday, my conversations with other people are very different now.
yeah.
It's that stepping into that last piece of, yeah, this is who I am.
Yep. And right.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm finding that the few times that I've really stepped out there, that the response I get back is so much more authentic than I ever thought it would be.
Mm.
It's almost like that that sets the stage for that level of honesty
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and that level of sharing, which is incredible.
Yeah. Yes. What I have found is when you hold that space, there have been some times, I would say over a couple that come to mind, excuse me. Oh, over the past, but see, you obviously hit on a big point there. Over the past 10 years or so, where I was guided, really pushed to truly open my heart and be 100% authentic without any expectation, like beyond ego, right? Complete authenticity, no expectations. This is who I am. This is what I understand. And the ego was like freaked out or hesitant at some level, right? And as it's gone along over the years, it's gotten less and less so because I've trusted it more and more because it's like, well, when I have held that authenticity, and people also, we have to recognize too that authenticity in our minds often equates to what we believe is vulnerability, and then we often equate vulnerability to weakness.
Right.
That is the opposite of what the case is.
Yep.
Because in authenticity there is no vulnerability,
Right.
because when you're in authenticity, I am like, this is who I am. You can't take it away from me because it's who I am. So
Right.
you can do whatever you want, you can say whatever you want, but this is it. This is what and where and who I am right now.
It's
And
an
I don't,
inevitability.
yes, and I don't apologize for it. I don't fear it. And when you come to the table with that energy, it can only reflect back to you. So then people, like you're saying, they respond in kind,
Hmm.
or they go away. And that's
Right.
okay too.
And that's very authentic as well.
Yes.
Exactly.
That's and I can't say how many times I've had people say to me, well, but if I say this or if I do this, I'm like, so here's the difference. The difference is when we're authentic with who we are, and the key is to commit to come from a level of love, to come from beyond the ego in our authenticity, to not say, well, you're a loser because you're not here with me, right? To not do like, this is where I am, and just because, like it's not judging anybody else in comparison to where authenticity is. It is, this is where I am, what I feel, what I, right now, and I'm not putting it on you. I am taking full 100% responsibility for this is me.
Right.
And I'm letting you have 100% responsibility for you being you.
Right.
And that takes off so much pressure, right? And
Really
then honestly, that's being 100% vulnerable, because you're truly just being who you are. And then there is no weakness in that vulnerability because there's no cracks in it. There's no fear. There's nothing you can take away from. You can't, if I'm 100% who I am, you can't take anything away from me because I'm still 100% who I am.
Right. 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 There's nothing external to be stripped away.
Right. And if somebody goes away or a relationship goes away, or, this is a big one. I'll tell you what, okay, it just sort of hit me. because it is a holiday week and a lot of people are seeing families and, people they don't
Right.
see all the time. And there's always like dramatic stuff and family drama and all that kind of stuff. And we tend to not be authentic around our families. Like the pattern in the past has been that we've not been authentic around our families because
Right.
we fit into certain roles that we were expected of us, that we believe we needed to play, to be loved, all that kind of stuff. So I can't tell you how many times I've had people come to me and be like, oh, after like a holiday like Thanksgiving or over the end of year holidays, whatever that is, and they're like, oh, I was doing so well and then I hung out with my family.
Right.
And then I'm like, well, why? Why did that change anything? Well, then you still have beliefs in there that believe you have to be somebody that's not authentically you
Right.
around your family. And if they don't like it, that's not a bad thing. If they don't like it and don't want to hang out with you or be with you, that's not a bad thing. Because if you're truly authentic, then you love yourself in an unconditional way, that you don't believe that other people have to, like tell you you're loved or worthy of being loved, to know that you are divine and perfect and unconditional love.
Right.
This is a tricky last 10 to 20%.
Right. 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 And each step of the way, given that, we're in the holiday season, comes from that gratitude.
Mm-hmm.
Gratitude for that freedom you'll experience in stepping into that last little bit of authenticity, because that will give you so much more depth.
Yes.
Than you can experience.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I had a family member say to me, well, nobody else I know is celebrating Thanksgiving this year. I don't know why you are. Because I'm thankful.
Right.
And I have nothing to not be thankful for. Honestly, it's all fabulous and perfect. And I'm so grateful for where we are now and what we're doing. And even if it's still forming, what's next and whatever, it's like there's plenty. And by the way, it doesn't matter because I don't need to justify why I'm doing what I'm doing. You can have your judgments and whatever, and that's fine. Okay, well, you keep yourself there, and that's fine. And I'm gonna keep myself here and be good with that too.
Right.
And and I have found this year has been great for shifting this, because so many people are now using the externalized fear to not be authentic, right?
Right.
To make excuses to not do things or be things or whatever. Where I have continued just going by guidance. When my guidance tells me to do something, I do it. When my guidance is not to, I don't.
Right.
And I found that allowing that authenticity has allowed, and while so many are like cowering in fear and essentially, right?
Right.
And not listening to that guidance over everything else, but to the ego, that those who I have had around me this year have been as authentic as I am.
Right. Right.
In general.
Perfection in that.
Yeah. And so even if I was thinking about that this weekend, even if it's a very different picture of who's around me than was a year ago, right? So like, the ego might sometimes judge that. And that's what I have people say, oh, but these relationships falling away, or blah, blah, blah. And it's like, that's okay. Because everybody is where they are. And it's like, I don't judge people for where they are. They are where they are. And I am where I am. And that therefore, those who are in my reality reflect back to me the same kind of authenticity.
Right.
And I believe it's probably going to continue to change and evolve continuously, because we have a lot shifting, right? So it's funny because, there's some people like, oh, well, when we can travel again and when we can do this again, blah, blah. And I'm like, I've been traveling more this year, I think, than I have for many other years before.
I have.
Yeah. Maybe not a couple places I wanted to go, but that's okay.
Right.
And those are all just, very 3D, very literal things, but that has to do. So the thing is to like, oh, well, I'm not going to do this because it's a little upset. Oh, I'm not doing this for my my mother, or I'm not doing this because of my father, or because my elderly parents, because I don't want them to get sick, and I see them and it's like, well, but that's your choice.
Right.
And that's fine. But then don't give it away to it's because of sickness. It's just, well,
That's your choice.
that's your choice of who you're being with. And that's okay.
And let's substitute, that's your authenticity right now.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I think this week, let's all look at that. Let's all look at
Yes.
where our authenticity lies, whether we're fooling ourselves to say, well, it's because of this. No, because that's just right here.
Yeah.
There are no external factors to authenticity.
Right. Whether it's what you do, who you're with, what you're eating. It's so funny because we had our bug guy, could come do the quarterly thing, I think on Friday, and he's a really nice guy. And I was talking to him and he's like, yeah, he's like, so y'all do like turkey for Thanksgiving? And I'm like, yeah. I said, I do. And he's like, yeah, we don't. And he was almost apologetic about it, and he's like, because this and this. I'm like, well, that's cool. I said, I do it because I actually have cracked the code on making the most, juicy turkey possible. So I said, I like it once a year. We like our open face sandwiches after for, the 4 or 5 days after, and then that's it. That's all I need to do it once a year. I was like, so I'm pretty happy doing that. And I said, but we don't do that for Christmas. We do different stuff for Christmas and New Year's and whatever. And he's like, yeah, because he's talking about this, and he's like, well, we do this and this and this. And I'm like, that's cool. I said, because there is no law that says you have to eat turkey on Thanksgiving.
That's right. That's
There's
exactly.
no law that says you have to treat anything. What if we treat it every day like Thanksgiving? Well, then what if like, as people say, well, what if we just treated Thanksgiving like any other day? Well, what if we treated every day as Thanksgiving?
Right. Right.
That to me feels really good.
And that's more what we're talking about with authenticity.
Yeah.
It's like you don't pick and choose when it shows up. You don't pick and choose when to use it in your creation. It's the basis.
Yep. Yep. And yeah, something shifting because my whole body's going,
It's getting a little swimmy.
And I'm like, well, and the other point with that is for us to, on my Living the Shift podcast on Thursday, I was talking about what was I talking about? The feeling discombobulated thing, right? And that, what had come to me during that was that shifting from this feeling like we have to anchor ourselves to anything by grounding, right?
Right.
Realizing that it's all within us. So therefore we anchor it inside us. So the earth is anchored inside of me. I don't have to anchor to earth or again, when I say anchor, or even ground, it makes me think of the shackles, right? But it's really connecting and becoming seamlessly one with, right? So allowing that to be all within you.
Allowing the authenticity of being everything.
Right. So the thing is, that happens when we allow ourselves that 100% authenticity.
Exactly.
And that all just feels really fabulous, though.
That does.
My head's all tingly. My heart's all tingly. So all of that. So that's what we'll focus on today is allowing ourselves to see within ourselves where we're still not being authentic.
Right.
To resolving that, right? To coming to that place of unconditional self-love, because this is where it all comes down to. This is the power. This is the power of it.
Right.
Is allowing that unconditional self-love, recognizing the divine, the full divine faceted as our embodiment as we are, and to take that power and to take 100% responsibility, 100% authenticity of this is my created reality.
Right.
For me, by me.
Absolutely. Right.
With love and gratitude, right? So even if it looks dissonant around you, well, then it's like, well, look at what I'm showing to myself. Isn't that fabulous? Right? Look at what I'm, and it's like, sometimes I ask myself, well, why did I create that in my reality? Something that might have come up from a long time ago or whatever. It's like, well, often it's to sort of, for my understanding is often it's to sort of reflect back to myself that I can be more authentic now
Yeah.
and act differently in that situation. And then I don't have to create it again after that kind of thing.
Right.
Or it becomes a non-issue because even if it does come up, then it's like, well, it's nothing that's going to trip me up or hold me back or anything like that. Oh, okay. Enough words because I am about to explode in all this yummy goodness. so, everybody who is watching or even listening to the podcast, you can do this outside of space and time. Just close your eyes, take a deep breath, calm yourself, and just be open to receive. Oh, there's a lot in there.
Yeah, I could have stayed out there a lot longer. I got kind of lost.
Yeah, I think I'm going out there when we get off because it felt really good.
Right.
Felt a whole bunch of stuff untangle, which was fabulous.
Yeah.
Fabulous. A lot of disentanglement, which was
Uh-huh.
yeah. That's all I can say about that because it just felt, and it rippled like I could see it rippling out, rippling
Right.
out. It was
Yep.
incredible. All right. Well, what a great topic to cover us for this week.
Right.
so, so everybody stay with this and come back and do that that meditation with us and that clearing with us again. If you feel the need to, don't just do it on your own.
Right.
Or keep yourself in that space the entire week. That commitment. Oh, that just feels yummy.
Yeah.
More yummy than any meal could give you.
Right.
All right. So thank you for joining us. We'll see you next week. This is Angela Coulter and
Sarah Sieg Avignoni.
signing off with this week's Ascended World. Have a great one, everyone. Happy Thanksgiving.
Right.
In the US anyway.